Good morning, everyone. Uh, This is the 221st meeting of the Audit Committee at the St. Louis Sewer District, Tuesday, April the 2nd. Roll call by the chair.
All right, the record will reflect the trustees, Wabi Kistner, Watson, Wilson, and Nickazison are present.
Yes, can I get an approval of the committee meeting minutes, March the 5th, 2020?
Move approval. Second.
No comments by the chair. Journal audit presentation by Clifton Lawson Allen. P.
All right, we have Andrew Zabel from Clifton Larson Allen, our external or financial auditor here. So we are kicking off audit season, and so he's going to talk a little bit about what that's going to look like for this.
Thanks, everybody. So to introduce myself, my name is Andrew Zabel. I'm the principal and the individual responsible for the overall execution of the audit services. CLA is industry specialized, so I spend all my time working with state and local governments and regulated and non-regulated utilities. So if you want to move to the next slide, as I walk through these materials, I kind of outline some of the trends that I'm seeing within the industry of organizations similar to MSD. I'll walk through the team that we've assigned to support MSD, and then just a general outline of our audit plan and the services that we provide. If you want to move 2 slides. So I think collectively, Marion and Tim, your team can take a sigh of relief. In 2022 and 2023, there were some fairly significant, from a time perspective, accounting standards that were required to be implemented. 2022 was related to leases. 2022 is related to software-based IT arrangements. Again, those new standards took time to implement. There's no significant standards I see on the horizon for fiscal year 2024. 2025, there's a couple of standards, but I don't think those will be nearly as significant as the organization had to implement in the prior 2 years. Move on to the next slide. So this outlines kind of some of the trends that I'm seeing with my other sewer and water utilities. MSD has always taken advantage of the SRF funding out there. The infrastructure bill provides a significant amount of that funding. That funding is going to flow largely through states. So I think this is a nice sigh of relief for the organization that they continue to take advantage of low-cost debt financing, even during a high interest rate environment. There's also some opportunities for lead and drinking water, but that's largely going to be applicable to water utilities. There's also $9 billion of opportunities for emerging contaminants. And then a big piece of the infrastructure bill is related to cybersecurity. There's a fairly significant amount of funding that's flowing through states to help local governments and utilities, mitigate the risk associated with cybersecurity. As we move on to the next slide, another piece of legislation that was passed in Q3 of 2022 was the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, this is a unique opportunity because these are tax credits that actually governments can take advantage of. So even though you guys don't file a tax return, you can still benefit from some of the opportunities as it relates to funding for renewable energy, that's solar, wind, battery storage, energy efficiency improvements, and electric vehicle investments, as well as charging stations. Those credits typically range from 30 to 50% of your cost, so those credits can provide a nice source of financing. Again, eligible entities include MSD and governmental organizations. Obtaining the credits is fairly easy. It's a direct pay. You simply file a tax form with the federal government, and then you'll get that. So those are kind of some of the trends that we're seeing from a legislation that MSD might be interested in. So as we move to the next slide, this is the service team. Heather Plitt that you'll see next to me is our GASB technical leader. She reviews all the statements. She helps me ensure quality of the external financial statements. Ethan Lay is the manager. He actually presented to you guys in December. He has supported MSD for the past 7 years through the audit process. Stacy Young, she helps lead our pension plan audits and the deferred compensation and defined compensation plans audits. And then Scott Inskeep, he is responsible for our IT work, so he oversees kind of our assessment of the IT general. You want to move to the next slide? One more. Thank you. So this is our outline of our plan relates to the financial statement. It's single audit. We're kicking off those audits now. They really climax and the field work is in August, and then we expect to issue in October. Just one thing to keep in mind is in the prior year, there was the implementation of Those new accounting standards, as well as MSD, had a significant upgrade with Oracle. So that was delayed 1 month. So we actually issued in kind of that late November, early December. Just want to reiterate that we're back on track to that historical time frame of trying to wrap up an issue in late October. And then moving on to the next slide, this outlines our benefit plan audit. So this covers the pension plan, defined contribution, and deferred compensation plans. That work is kicking off basically right now. So that's we're in our field work. We plan to wrap those up towards the end. One more slide. So our overall audit plans, we consider significant risk and fraud. Typically, that's related to revenue. And then we consider inherent risk. And there are some inherent risks associated with MSD simply because there's a lot of estimates around your allowance for bad debt, your unbilled. There's some insurance reserve, pension, and OPEB estimates. So estimates create inherent risk to the financial statements. We also consider the controls at MSD, which are very strong. Considering all those factors, we determine our detection risk, and that determines and outlines the amount of audit work that we're required to do. So we consider your significant risk, your inherent risk and controls, and that kind of outlines the scope of our audit work.
Andrew, I know annually as part of your fraud risk assessment,
Yeah,
correct? Probably be Trustee Watson is
correct. Yeah.
prepared.
Well, I mean, we'll talk to management, so we'll talk to you and Marion.
But as far as the board,
No one else will know. And I would expect that reach out in May. Timeframe.
thank you.
And then moving on to our next slide. So these outline our deliverables. So our June 30th year-end deliverables, we have the financial statements. We have a supplemental report that we issue over budgetary comparisons in the fund financial statements. We issue our single audit, and then agreed upon procedures that's required by Missouri Department of Natural Resources. Just to outline, and one item that is no longer included on this list that Tim and I have worked through is a project expenditure report. So that was something that we thought was required to be completed in the past. As opposed to look at the ordinance, that's something that's not required. And then for our December 31st year ends, we have the employee pension plan, deferred compensation, and defined contribution plans. Those are issued in the June timeframe.
And then I'll just make one comment related to the project expenditures report. What it was a list of projects funded by bond proceeds. We started doing that a long time ago when we funded most of, we've been bonding for 20 years. So back then, most of the capital project was funded by bond proceeds. So it was a way to track that bond proceeds were only being used for capital expenditures. Today, it's not a requirement, and we fund only about 60% of the capital plan, so it's not the same kind of need as it was before, because we have plenty of projects that also are being funded by cash. But if it's something that gave the board comfort or they want to see, we can certainly add. But we took it off just because it wasn't really being used, and it didn't have the same sense of urgency that it used to back when we funded almost everything on the capital plan through bonding. Any questions or concerns about that?
Is that, don't the indentures, isn't there disclosure?
So we do still track. So from an accounting basis, we're tracking everything that's getting paid out. It's just what we took out was the audit report that listed, it was just really a list of all the projects, and then what was, how much of it was funded by bond proceeds. So Mary and I weren't using it from a management perspective. We underwent an IRS audit on one of our bond issuances a couple of years ago and had everything that we needed to get through that audit. Okay, thanks. All right, sorry, anything?
Move on to the next slide. So this kind of outlines the responsibilities of governance, management, and me as the external auditor. Really, we work and we support the management team in the execution of our audits, but our responsibility is to deliver it and communicate effectively to those charged with governance. If at any point in time that you feel there's something of concern that you need to reach out to me, if you go down 2 slides, you'll have my contact information. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm here to support MSD and really support those charged with governance to ensure, quality in the financial reporting and ensuring that there's no material issues as it relates to fraud or any impropriety. So again, here's my contact information. Don't ever hesitate. And overall, MSD, and thank you for the opportunity to work with you.
Any questions for Andrew?
I had one question. I think it was the Inflation Reduction Act funds. Is there a cutoff timeframe after which you can't apply any longer?
So, there's concerns with changes in the administration that some of that funding might go away, but as of now, that funding will run through 2030. So, and if you're investing, I would think the opportunity for MSD would be with electric vehicles and charging stations. If that's an investment you're considering, you file a tax return. You can file that either on your calendar year or your fiscal year.
I know there were some projects that had to be started this calendar year to be eligible. I'm not sure if that applied to every.
I think that was only applicable to renewable
energies. That's the one. Okay.
Renewable natural gas specifically.
Okay.
I was just hoping that MSD was going to take full advantage of.
We've
dollars
looked
that are
at
out
that. We've looked at potential renewable energy options, but the costs still outweigh the benefits. And then I know we've looked at solar panels.
So-
We've looked at.
Yeah, recently we just looked at a solar project and even getting some grant funding from the state of Missouri. The payback on the project was just astronomically long, so we didn't pursue it.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Right. Thanks. And then Trustee Watson, I have one more item on the agenda today.
Go ahead.
So at next week's board meeting, there will be a resolution to authorize an option year for the contract with Armanino. Armanino is our internal auditor. So Andrew's from Clifton Larson Allen, our external auditor. They do the financial statements. Internal audit is who you generally see here sitting with Todd Loretta. Todd couldn't be here this morning. So we are recommending that you exercise the option year. This is, I think, the second option year. Yes, the second. It's the second year, first option year first. So it's be the third overall year of the contract. Armanino does a good job. So Todd helps coordinate their efforts. They work with us on the risk assessment, identifying what areas to target. So there's a rotation, then we also look at significant risk. But they are useful for them because they can provide experts in cybersecurity and construction contracts, in business administration and fraud, just a lot of different areas. So that's really beneficial to us because they're one firm that can provide expertise in all those areas. Any questions about Armanino? All right, so Trustee Watson, that's all we have for business at the Audit Committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Next tentative date. Next meeting, tentative date, April 30th, 2024. Get a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Thank you.
Okay, we will get materials swapped out and Trustee Nicholasison will be ready to start right when we hit 7:45. Again.
Good morning and welcome to the 253rd meeting of the Program Management Committee. I get a roll call.
Yes, the record will reflect that trustees Nicholasison, Wilson, Watson, Kistner, and Wabi are present in the room, and trustee Evans has now joined online.
Approval of committee minutes, March 5th, 2024.
So move.
Second. There are no comments by the chair. Engineering Department agenda items for April 11th, 2024 board meeting. Red?
Good morning, trustees. Few items here for you this morning. First three items are construction projects the district bid over the past month. They'll be coming to you next Thursday at the board meeting. First item is the Clark Avenue Sanitary Relief Project. This action will appropriate funds and authorize staff to enter a construction contract. The work being done consists of construction of approximately 1,200 feet of 15-inch diameter sanitary sewer. The purpose of the project is to alleviate building backups and provide relief from wet weather sanitary sewer surcharging. The district only received one bid for this project. The low bid was from Keeley Construction Group. The bid was above our designer's estimate, and our appropriation of $1,785,000 is above the original budget for the project. We did an analysis of the one bid received and did some polling of some of the other bidders that would typically bid on this. We found that it was a very high-risk job. And we also found that our engineer and my staff kind of overlooked some high risk in their estimate. And there were some requirements by St. Louis County Highways and Parks. So it was those risks was evident by only receiving one bid. Staff is recommending we go ahead and proceed with this bid. All the pricing looks, based on the risk, looks like it's in line. Also, Keeley's is providing 20.34 MWB percentage, which meets our 10% minority goal and our 10% women goal. Any questions? All right. Next item is the infrastructure repair rehabilitation. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter a construction contract. The work consists of the rehabilitation of approximately 45,000 linear feet of sanitary sewers, 6 to 57 inches in diameter, utilizing cured-in-place pipe method. The purpose of this project is to reduce inflow and infiltration into and rehabilitate older, damaged, and deteriorated sanitary sewers throughout the district. The sewers identified for rehabilitation are identified through our annual CMOM inspection program, which is required by our consent decree. The district received two bids on this job. The low bid was from SAK Construction. The bid was below our designer's estimate, and our appropriation of $3,750,000 is below the original budget for the project. SAK is committed to 20.73% MWB participation, which meets our 10% minority and 10% women goal for the project. Next item is the Normandy Sanitary Relief Project. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter a construction contract. The work consists of the construction of approximately 8,600 feet of pipe 12 to 54 inch in diameter. The purpose of this project is to reduce building backups and overcharged sanitary sewers. This project will also provide for the elimination of 2 constructed sanitary sewer overflows upon completion. The district received 7 bids on this job. The low bid was from J.H. Barra Construction. The bid was below our design estimate, and the total appropriation of $8,600,000, which will be $6 million in fiscal year 24 and 2.6 in fiscal year 25, is below our original 2-year budget for the project. J.H. Barra has committed to just over 20% minority and women participation on the project, which meets our 10% minority and 10% women goal. All right, moving on. The next 2 items are OMCI grant reimbursements to 2 municipalities. Both grants are from the Gravois Creek OMCI reimbursement program. The first is with the city of Crestwood, an agreement Authorize staff to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Crestwood. This ordinance authorizes us to enter the intergovernmental agreement for eligible stormwater expenditures where revenues collected by the Gravois Creek OMCI. Eligible stormwater expenditures include the following: storm sewer and inlet construction, drainage improvements, stream bank stabilization, and erosion control projects, clearing under bridges or cleaning detention basins, stormwater planning or engineering costs, and other stormwater-related expenses as determined appropriate by the district. This particular grant, the city of Crestwood is making some repairs on Gravois Creek along Pardee Lane for some stream bank erosion stabilization. The amount of the project is $230,675. The city will contract for design and construction for these bank stabilization, and they're requesting reimbursement of $230,675. Any questions? All right, again, another grant from the Gravois Creek OMCI. This is for the city of Oakland. Authorize staff to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Oakland for stormwater expenditures where the revenue is collected, again, from the Gravois OMCI. The city of Oakland is performing the East Madison Avenue drainage improvements. They're requesting $17,132. The city's contracting for the design and construction of stormwater improvements, which include curb inlets, storm sewers, and curbing. The total cost of the project is actually $46,000. They're requesting reimbursement of the $17,132. All right, the next two items, the district's requesting authorization to proceed to condemnation efforts on two projects. The first project is the Mulberry Creek Sanitary Relief Harwick to Lindbergh project. This authorized staff to proceed to further condemnation efforts, including the filing of all necessary court pleadings or documents leading to the acquisition of permanent and temporary construction easements on 6 parcels located in the city of Crestwood and Sunset Hills. Easements and temporary construction easements are needed to construct the project, which consists of approximately 4,200 linear feet of 8 to 27-inch in diameter sanitary sewers. Again, the purpose of this project is alleviate sanitary sewer surcharging and building backups, and it will also remove one capacity-related SSO from a manhole. The district's currently been unable to negotiate all the easements. The project originally had 15 easements to be acquired. We've acquired 9 of those easements and now kind of reached a point to where we're requesting condemnation on the 6 remaining parcels. So I'm going to go through each one of these, and there'll be a diagram or a map of each one as we go through in your packet or up on the screen. The first parcel is parcel 13. The district, all these 6 parcels we've made offers to the property owners. All but one have come back with a counter offer. One, we're having difficulty communicating. In other words, they're not getting back to us. So we continue our negotiations. Some of them we think we should be able to get. Parcel 13, as you can see, we're working in their kind of their rear yard. So take up a lot of their rear yards. There's a lot of concern from property owners when we're working in their yard, particularly with their house or any kind of improvements they have. So sometimes we get in that discussion, so it takes a little longer. Next parcel is parcel 39. As you can see here, we're actually going between 2 houses, taking up quite a bit of room. The one house has a swimming pool. We've made an offer, and this is one that have not come back. There is some concerns with regard to an existing tree at the location. And parcel 40 is adjacent to that. So kind of the same thing. We've made an offer. They have come back with another offer, which is, and some other claims regarding an existing tree. We're trying to work out those agreements. Next parcel is parcel 44. we've made an offer and they have not gotten back to us yet. Then finally, parcel 21, which is on the last sheet. It's a parcel way back on a large, long piece of property, not really impacting a whole lot. We've made an offer on that, and they provided a counteroffer, which is not acceptable to us. So we're still working with that property owner. And then finally, parcel 53. Obviously, we're working along Harwick Drive in the front yard. This looks like one we should be able to obtain. Any questions on that one? All right, we've got one more project that we're requesting approval for condemnation. It's the Upper McTeese trunk sewer relief. Again, authorize the district to proceed with further condemnation, including filing all necessary court pleadings on 9 parcels of ground located in unincorporated St. Louis County. On this particular project, we're getting easements to construct approximately 15,000 feet of 8 to 36-inch sanitary sewer, including porcelain and tunnel, necessary appurtenances. Purpose of project is to provide relief to the sanitary sewer to prevent backups and overflows of the system. This particular project, obviously very long project, it had 46 easements acquired. So we've made really good progress on this. We've already acquired 37. We're down to 9 properties for condemnation. I'm not going to go through each one individually. It's a lot of properties, but a lot of these are smaller easements where we've actually, the people have not, they're just basically not getting back to us. There is one parcel that it appears to be common ground, but it's actually platted to an individual. That's parcel 113. So we're trying to work that out. Apparently when the subdivision was platted, property was never transferred over to trustees, so it still remains in a single property owner's name. So I'm not sure that property owner is interested in dealing with it, so we're having to deal with that. So there may be some property ownership changes. But we're moving along on these. But like I said, it's a long project, not uncommon to run into difficulty as we get towards the end of acquiring those easements. So we're just asking for approval to move forward and keep the project on schedule so we can meet the requirements of the consent. All right, I have one more item. It's a resolution on next week's agenda. It's for our general services agreement for easement acquisition services. This resolution will authorize the district to execute the second option year of 2 option years, 1-year renewal for easement acquisition services with OR Colon. The original contract provided for an initial term of 1 year with 2 additional years. We utilize OR Colon as a staff extension. We acquire about 400 easements a year, so I have internal staff doing it. We've been in various. I think we're about 1 person short right now, so we utilize OR Colon. They'll acquire about 25% of our easements, worth of the easements. They'll do about 100. So this is just renewing that. They get paid through the appropriation that we did for our annual easement act that was done earlier this year. Questions? Or if there's any questions between now and next week, feel free to reach out and hope I can answer them for you. That concludes the agenda.
Thank you, Rich. Next tentative meeting date is April 30th, 2024. Can I get a motion for adjournment?
Move.
Second.
Okay, Trustee Evans, we will get the papers changed out and we'll let you know when we're ready to start the Finance Committee meeting.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll call to order the 301st meeting of the Finance Committee. Can I get a roll call, please?
Yes, the record will reflect the trustees, Nicholasison, Wilson, Watson, Kister, and Wabi are present in the room, and trustee Evans is present online.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the March 5th meeting?
So move.
Second.
All right, next item is the fiscal year 25 budget presentation.
Good morning, trustees. We're here this morning to present the district's strategic business operating plan and our preliminary budget for FY25. So the agenda for today will consist of the following items. Brett will provide an overview of our strategic business and operating plan. Rich and I will cover the preliminary budget, which will consist of our operating budgets and our capital budget. And then I will wrap it up with kind of the next steps in our budgeting process. I'll turn it over to Brett to give you an overview of the strategic business operating.
Thank you, Marion. So we're required to have a strategic business plan that covers the next 5 years. We've gone through that. And our overall arching goals are some service level goals and consistent, high quality service to our customers. We need to comply with any of our legal and regulatory requirements and make sure we're meeting our schedules with regards to the consent decree. Part of what we've been going through right now is setting new rates for the next 4 years, and part of our business plan is to see how we can minimize those rate increases and be responsive to our customers in how we spend the money that we collect. And then finally, yes, of course, be accountable to the community. We have, if you look at the business operating plan, there are 6 strategies. I won't read them there. They cover wide ranges of different areas that we're involved in. This is what drives us setting our objectives for the next 12-month period, the next fiscal year, and all of our major budgetary items are directed towards these strategies. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Marion.
Thank you, Brett. For those that are interested, a detailed copy of the strategic business plan was included in the preliminary budget document that you received last month, and you can find that on pages 24 through 54 of that particular document. So I'm going to kick us off with an overview of our preliminary budget. So I'll start with the operating budget. As required by charter, we have a balanced budget, meaning that our expected revenues equal our total expenses for the fiscal year. This slide shows, again, that the district is proposing a balanced budget totaling approximately $1.2 billion of revenues and $1.2 billion of expenses. We'll discuss the components of each of these budget items in greater detail as we go through the presentation today. So the general fund changes will be detailed a little later in the presentation, but just as an overview, the general fund budget includes approximately $5.3 million of incremental budgets. Those are additional items above what was in last year's budget that's tied to our strategic business operating. There's approximately a 6% or $1.4 million increase in our supply services and excluding the incremental items from FY24. In addition, our personnel services, you'll see an increase of about 1%, which is about $1.3 million, primarily related to projected 3% increase or $2 million increase in our salaries. There's a 3.5% overall increase between FY24 and FY25 for approximately $8.3 million in the operating budget. And that includes the incremental items that we added that relate to the strategic business. Also, you'll see that our total capital budget is approximately $612.7 million. The bulk of that relates to wastewater, about $572 million, with the remaining $41 million relating to stormwater projects. And Rich will give you some additional information on the capital program later in the presentation. The budget assumes that we're going to issue $227.2 million of additional bonds during the next fiscal year. And then finally, depending on what happens later today, but in our preliminary budget, we included approximately, it was 34 million, or I'm sorry, $7.4 million in FY25 that related to our proposed stormwater capital program. And again, if that passes, there would not be any changes to the budget. If it does not pass, we have a revised budget document that we'll present at the next meeting.
But when the revive, so if W doesn't pass, S doesn't, you'll reduce next year's budget by.
Correct. So what you'll see if the stormwater proposal does not pass, then we will take out projected revenues of $7.4 million. So we have to make an equal cut from the operating expenses as well.
Right. Got it.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about our projected revenues. Again, as I indicated earlier, our revenues are projected to be approximately $1.2 billion. The largest source of our revenues is our wastewater revenues. We are projecting to receive about $516 million, which is about 44% of our revenues in the next fiscal year. The next largest portion relates to the revenue bonds that we hope to issue, again, about $227 million. That's approximately 20% of our projected revenues. We have taxes that we'll collect, which should be about $50 million. All of the taxes relate to stormwater, so we use those taxes for stormwater purposes. That's about roughly 4% of our budget, revenue budget. We then have some miscellaneous income that we get from investments and other income, which totals about $25 million or 2% of the budget. Again, if the stormwater proposal passes, we're estimating we'll get about $7.4 million in fiscal year 25. And then finally, we're going to use some of our fund balances to supplement our revenue budget. That'll be approximately $343 million, or about 29% of the budget, of the revenue budget. Okay, in terms of the impact on our customers here with respect to wastewater. So this slide shows that the new monthly residential bill for a typical customer that uses about 5 CCFs of water, that's about 3,800 gallons of water a month. This shows the approved rate increases. So there'll be about a $4 increase from FY24, or 7%. The district has been experiencing declining billed revenues. We've seen water usage drop for several consecutive years. And so as a result, our typical customer has seen their water usage drop from about 6 CCFs, which is about 4,500 gallons a month, to about roughly 3,800 gallons.
You guys, we anticipate that?
Not at the same rate, but in the budget, we do show a decline in water volume. We're hoping, to be honest with you, that we've kind of reached that floor, if you will. But we continue to monitor that, and we'll adjust future budgets as necessary based on the trends that we're seeing.
Hey, Mary, can you step back a little bit?
Sure.
On the 300 million in fund balance. Can you, we exhausting fund balance or?
No, we're not. We have enough fund balance basically to allocate towards the revenue budget. But no, our fund balance will continue. We actually show we show a decrease in fund balance, obviously, kind of given this amount that we're using. But we're projecting that will continue to be stable going forward.
I think a lot of that fund balance is actually like SRF and WIFIA loans that we've contracted
Correct.
for. So it's available balance, but it hasn't been.
Correct. Okay, I'll talk about our expenses next. So again, our preliminary expenses are projected to be approximately $1.2 billion, which equals the revenue. The largest portion is our capital program, which is approximately $618 million, or 53% of that budget. Our expected wastewater expenditures, you'll see those in blue there. They comprise about $570 million of this amount, with stormwater expenditures totaling approximately $43 million. That's the amount or the portion of the graph that's in red. The next largest portion is the operating budget, which is approximately $260 million, or 22% of our projected budgeted expenses. And then debt service is projected at about $295 million, or roughly a quarter of the expense budget. So next, I will cover some of the items that are in our general fund budget. And I'll just kind of, I won't go through all of these, but I'll give you just a quick overview of some of the significant changes that you see on this chart here. So starting in the Secretary Treasurer's line item, you'll see a drop there of almost $2 million. That is because we budgeted $1 million for election expenses that in FY24, so we have to pay to put our items on the ballot, and that is about $1 million that we budgeted in FY24. Obviously, we won't do that in 25, so you see that decline. There was also about $800,000 relating to cost of issuance expenses. Tim mentioned the WIFIA program, which is the federal funding that we receive. We have to pay cost of issuance expenses related to that. That's included in our budget. So that equals the $1.9 million roughly that you see there in the decline in Tim's budget. Also in information technology, we're having we have an increase there of about $812,000. Most of that relates to contract help that we hire. These are IT folks that have an expertise in a particular area that we bring on for a short duration of time, usually. That totals about $567,000 of that increase. And then we have additional computer equipment that we intend to procure. That's about $250,000 of that increase. In our operations department, we are projecting a $3.6 million increase in that budget, or about 2.7%. About $1 million of that relates to personnel services, so that's salaries, FICA, related benefits associated with our employee benefits as well. Contractual services are projected to increase by about $2.6 million. We have some additional repairs that we're doing at several of the plants. So that budget covers machinery and equipment services, electrical repairs that we do at the plant, hauling of our sludge to the landfill, which is about $500,000, and then building and repair services, which total approximately $240,000. We also have decreases in the budget that offset against the amounts that I just referenced. There's about $1 million of decreased expenses in our utilities and in our capital outlay budgets. So overall, again, our operating budget is projected to increase by about $8.3 million, or about 3.5% from our FY24 budget. Finally, this slide shows our FY21 to 23 actual amounts and our FY24 forecast. As you are aware, we're still in FY24, so we forecasted an amount for FY24. So what we're showing you here is a comparison of our expected results to what we included in our rate commission budget, which covers this time period. So I'll start off with our current projections for our total revenues. Our total revenues show a 3.4% unfavorable variance, and that equates to about a $72.1 million difference between what was in the rate commission budget for revenues versus what we actually expect to receive. Some of that related to the pandemic. When that occurred, we saw, particularly in FY21, a decline in our revenues. We've have, as a result of water usage that I mentioned dropping, we've seen declines there as well. And so what we've done, though, is we've adjusted our budgets to reflect that decline in revenue. So although it's unfavorable compared to the rate commission projections, which occurred roughly about probably 5-6 years ago, we have, for the last 2 fiscal years, our revenues have exceeded our budget amount, and we expect that to continue this fiscal year. So as I mentioned earlier, we tweak our budget based on projections. So the second item I'd like to cover is our total expenses. So our total expenses are actually 6.5% favorable when compared to budget. That is roughly about a $200 million favorable budget variance there. And then finally, our bond proceeds are unfavorable to budget by about 20%. That line item, I don't want to say it's misleading, but the bond proceeds, we typically, if we don't have projects ready to go move forward, then we were not going to issue bonds. So we, in some cases, we've delayed issuance of bonds, but in other cases where there's an opportunity for us to refinance bonds, which Tim and his team have done a really nice job of doing that during this time period, then we'll issue refunding bonds, which show up here, but the overall effect is our debt service expenditures are dropping. So although we're issuing more bonds, it's to refinance existing debt. So I will now turn it over to Rich to cover our capital budget.
All right, thank you. As Marion indicated, as you got a preliminary budget document for the operating, or for the entire district budget, in addition to that, you've got a preliminary, what we refer to as a budget supplement, that has the entire capital program for fiscal year 25, lists all individual projects, their costs and expenditures, both on the wastewater and stormwater side. So I'm going to give a high-level summary of that document today and cover a few other items. So first up, I'll kind of give a summary of the overall 25-year CRP program. We have a total of 127 new projects for approximately $556 million. I kind of do a breakdown of these in some of the future slides. In addition to that, we have 7 projects, which wastewater projects that were planned for this fiscal year that due to delays will be moved to next fiscal year. We've had issues getting the projects completed for various reasons, and I'll cover the details of those 7 projects. So it'll be a total of 134 projects for a total of about $615 million for the capital program this fiscal year. Next, kind of do a breakdown of all the new projects. As Marion kind of indicated earlier, 92% of our capital program is on the wastewater side. There are 99 projects of the 127 for a total of about $513 million. and 8% of those stormwater projects or 28 projects for $43.2 million. And again, that could be impacted depending on the outcome of the election today. Next slide. On the new wastewater side, this is just a breakdown of where those projects are going to take place by location within the district. Majority of the capital program will take place at our treatment plants, and that's primarily due to the wastewater incinerator projects ongoing at both our Bissell and Limay treatment plant. That accounts for almost half of the wastewater budget in fiscal year 25. And then 4% of the work is performed district-wide. Those are our services that support our cleaning and inspection throughout the district. And then 34% of the program is located in St. Louis County. That's primarily continuation of our sanitary sewer overflow. A lot of those are relief projects that we have going. And really that's part of the plan, is to do the work in the county and the separate sewer areas early, removing those overflows. We've had good success, again, meeting our consent decree goal of removing 85% of our overflows by the end of 2023. And as the program evolves, you'll see the shift from the county over to the city as we do some of the large combined sewer overflow projects for the project, or for the program. Kind of where our funding comes for the capital improvement program, as indicated by the slide. The majority of our project dollars come from the Sanitary Replacement Fund, which funds all of our wastewater projects. 3% come from the general fund. These are projects such as our green infrastructure program, some of our district-wide vendor services, such as CCTV, our radar rainfall, and our stream flow monitoring. The remaining projects are funded from stormwater funds, our OMCI taxing districts, or the improvement funds, which are also included in the OMCI fund. So of the total of 129 appropriations for the project, for a total of about $556 million. Just a little bit about the OMCIs. These OMCIs will continue in fiscal year 25, and with success of the stormwater rate proposal, then we'll be requesting that these be set back to zero, and have future discussions on these OMCIs. But we do have revenue, so we're doing projects in fiscal year 25. And when we reinstituted those in 6 of the 7 OMCIs, we have grant programs where 50% of the dollars within that OMCIs is granted back to municipalities within the OMCIs. Obviously, I brought 2 of those to you during the program management meeting. Proved to be successful. We're going to continue a similar program for grants as part of the new rate, should it be successful. So the total revenue that's generated by these OMCIs, various amounts, I won't read each one, for a total of $10.7 million, and then 4.9 of that will be available for grants. And the reason it's not exactly half is when we turn the Maline Creek OMCI back on, the municipalities within that OMCI did not want to proceed with the grant program due to their ability to be able to manage that. Always do a breakdown of the engineering versus construction. Gives a kind of a good look of where the program was at. 87% of CRP dollars will be for construction projects, and 13% for engineering, or about $73 million. Kind of give you an idea of where we've come since we signed the consent decree. When we signed the consent decree, over the first 5 years, our engineering costs were about 27% of the overall budget. And that was primarily because we were doing a lot of design intensive work up front, so we could eventually get to construction for the projects and remove the overflows. If I look at the last 5 years, we're currently at we're averaging 14%. I would expect that that's probably will be in that 10 to 14% range as we move forward for the design and construction. Could vary a little bit once we get into stormwater. Stormwater tend to be, the engineering costs tend to be a little higher. You're dealing with a lot of individual property owners, things like that. So there's a lot of changes that could be made during stormwater.
Rich, this 13% is part of the capital budget. This is not.
Correct.
Do we allocate costs?
We do. We charge back to the individual projects.
Okay.
Next, these are the continued projects. The 7th project I talked about earlier that that were planned to be finished in this fiscal year, and they're being delayed. One of those projects is our Lime 3 pump station and force main. It's a large dollar project. There's actually 2 appropriations that are being delayed. One, the engineering services during construction, and the construction itself. We're not sure, but it's very possible we did bid this job. So it is possible. We're doing the MWB evaluation right now. So we're hoping to make that. So that'll be about $35 million that will not carry over. I won't know for a couple more weeks, but we're hopeful we'll get that. There's sanitary relief, Gravois Creek. Again, that's being continued. We're still in easement acquisition on that project. Another large sanitary relief projects, our 2 Mile Creek project. There are 2 appropriations with that. Again, engineering during construction and the construction itself. There are close to 50 easements on this project, very difficult project. So we're still in easement acquisition on that and weren't able to make the project during this fiscal year. And then there's one additional project, the Prospect Hill leachate pretreatment systems. This is a pretreatment system we're going to be putting in at our ash landfill, Prospect Hill. That is actually a project we're coordinating with Missouri DNR, trying to seek grants to fully fund that project. That's actually to deal with emerging contaminants, to removal of PFAS from our leachate from our ash landfill. And right now we've got commitment from our MDNR to fully fund that project. But we're trying to make sure we get everything included. So that's why that project carried over. And then what we always do is included in that budget supplement is a listing of projects that we actually have planned for fiscal year 26. But occasionally, if there's projects that drop off or we look like we need additional funding for the multi-year projects, we list those in the CIRP. It requires us to list those in order to do that because of the public notice on the projects. So we provide a listing of projects. This particular year, we did not move any projects up into the fiscal year. So sometimes we utilize this contingency project, sometimes we don't. So there's a total of 23 projects here at $382 million. The bulk of that is multi-year projects, such as the incinerator project. Is if we would need funding early, we could pull that forward. But the only way we would do that is if we had excess funding within the fiscal year. What we found in this fiscal year is we pretty much spent everything that we had planned during the fiscal year. This here slide gives you kind of a breakdown of the type of projects that we're doing throughout the district. We have asset management renewal. That's basically the CIPP lining or cured in place lining of a lot of our sewer system. We have 20 of those projects. Obviously, an aging sewer system, we want to take care of that work. We have city shed projects. They're designed to reduce flooding in the combined sewer system, primarily the city of St. Louis. We have our CSO projects, which reduce combined sewer overflows, either to the River des Peres or the Mississippi River. As we move forward in the next few fiscal years, you'll see that the number of projects and the dollar amount increase on that. We're still doing a lot of work on the sanitary sewer overflow program. Obviously, Obviously, that program concludes in 2033, so sooner than the overall program of 2039. So we're still doing a lot of sanitary relief. A lot of those projects are going to really happen over the next 2 to 3 years. So a lot of the work still to do in the sanitary area. Of our treatment plants, obviously we've got the fluidized bed incinerator project, but then we have multiple projects at various treatment plants to rehabilitate some of the systems and processes at those treatment plants. District-wide projects, various planning and support services, I mentioned those earlier, our inspection, CCTV inspection, some of our mapping or the storm mapping, things like that. And then finally, the stormwater program, it's a total of 28 projects for a total of 43 million. And Marion mentioned earlier that this would be reduced by some. We'll only see a partial of the revenues in fiscal year 25 from the new rate. That's the first part of actual 25. So our plan there is to utilize that funding to kickstart some of the design projects, get some of those projects ready to build in the second half or during the fiscal year 25. Obviously, that would be reduced by, I think Marion mentioned about $7 million in a number of projects with an unfavorable vote today. And then finally, I wanted to, that kind of concludes the overall CRP. Again, the detailed summary is in that budget supplement, but also in your, actually handed out with you, in front of you, I've got 2 documents. One, it's kind of excerpts of that budget supplement, kind of goes through some of the major projects individual, gives the pictures, kind of some of the major, it reiterates some of the stuff that I just talked about, but it gives it in a little more detail. In fact, we used to go through this entire, but I'd have you here all morning, so we've kind of provided that to you in a summary document. Also, something we kicked off last year primarily after the incinerator project, which was a very significant project for the district. In your packet, we have 4 sheets, 2-sided sheets of really the 4 major projects, and by major, significant programs that are $750 to over $1 billion of the projects that we have coming over the next 15 years. In your packet, the first one is nutrient removal. In the next 4 years, we will be doing some phosphorus removal at some of our wastewater treatment plants. And the sheet will show kind of the appropriation schedule, kind of the lower left-hand corner kind of shows you what we'll be bringing and the time frame we'll be bringing. And then on the backside, we kind of give you an idea of when those contract approval dates. Some of them are out there pretty far, but we wanted to make sure the board was aware of these upcoming projects and keep you informed. I'm not going to go through the other 3 sheets, but very similar. We've got sanitary storage facilities. We've got some along River to Pear and then an upper River to Pear that we have planned. The one in both of those are coming in the next 8 years. And then the 2 large CSO program tunnels, both over $1 billion. The lower middle River to Pear tunnel, that was a tunnel that we delayed in order to do the incinerator project. But we're basically over the next 4 years, we'll be doing easement acquisition. So my plan is every time I bring an appropriation that's listed on the back, I'll kind of provide this sheet updated continually for the board, so we don't lose track of those projects and how they're coming to you. I think that was something we wanted to do, after the discussion on the incinerator. But with that, that is all I had. If there are any questions, I can take them now, or after when Marion's done, I can take them. All right, Marion.
Thank you, Rich. In terms of what's next with the budgeting process, so we will put a notice in the papers identified in the slide regarding a public hearing, and I'll give you some additional information regarding that just a moment, but we'll do that around middle of April. We'll come back at the next Finance Committee meeting, and we will provide recommended changes to the preliminary budget that you received. I do anticipate that there will be some changes, so we'll bring those back to you next at the next Finance Committee meeting. During the May 9th board meeting, we'll have a budget introduction, so we'll place that on the agenda for the budget to be introduced, along with our rate ordinance and our tax ordinance as well. At the end of that May meeting, we will have a finding of facts committee that will be assembled to consider our taxes. That finding of facts committee consists of, normally there's 3 board members that sit on that committee to review our proposed taxes, and we will provide them with the information related to that meeting. We have a public hearing that will be scheduled at 6 o'clock after the board meeting concludes. During that public meeting, we provide an overview of our proposed rates. We will cover some of the same things that you've heard this morning, our capital program, what that looks like, our operating expenditures, and then conclude that meeting. And then finally, in June, we will ask the board to consider adopting the proposed FY25 budget. If you have any questions at all between now and any of those dates, please feel free to reach out to me directly, and we'll make sure you get answers. Trustee, that's all that I have related to this item. Thank you all for your attention.
Okay, all right then. I've got the next couple of items. I'll just move forward. That was everything on the budget, Marion?
Yes, that's
okay. Thank you. All right, I don't have a presentation for this. I wanted to give you a quick tender offer update. If you remember, last month we talked about the opportunity we had because of where interest rates are to reach out to investors of our, the holders of our 2019 C bonds and offer to buy those bonds back at a discount. We're hoping to get about 20 to 30% of those bonds back. We ended up only getting about 12% back. So you can look at that as the investors are really happy to hold our bonds and didn't want to give them up. That's good news, I suppose, because they would have to take a write-down, an accounting write-down, if they tendered the bonds back. But for us, while I wanted better participation because the savings would be better, the 12% we did get back are still going to generate about $3.5 million of savings, about $2.5 million on a present value basis. So it will reduce future debt expense. So when we think about this, what we want to do is weigh that opportunity versus if we wait for another 5 years till the bonds are callable. And the fact is, or what's likely, I should say, not necessarily a fact, is that because these rates were issued as taxable bonds in 2019 when rates were really low, we're unlike, it would take a significant shift in interest rates again in order to get us to a point where there are actual refunding savings on this bond. So the plan is to move forward and accept about 32 million of these bonds back. We'll buy them at 80-something cents on the dollar. Then we'll issue tax-exempt bonds, about 26 million bonds to fund this $32 million. A little bit less tender buyback. So the net result will be, again, debt service reduction of about $3.5 million over the next 20 years, spread out over the next 20 years. So successful transaction, not as successful as I was hoping, but still a savings that opportunity that is not available if we don't do it. Cost of issuance on the on the bonds, it'll be about $450,000. And a little bit, there'll be some for the, that'll be on the direct placement bonds. There'll be some for the tender. I don't have the final numbers on that. We just closed the tender last night. It's a little bit higher on a percentage basis of bonds than we usually see because it's a smaller transaction, but the net result is still savings. That is, it's about 2.5, I think, net of cost of issue. And I'll come back next month when we have final numbers and kind of present you where we were. So it's about a about a 7 to 7.5% present value savings on the bonds that are being refunded. So, which is not bad. We've done that before when interest rates, we've been getting something more like 10% or plus when rates were really low, but 7 to 8% is kind of normal for refundings prior to that. Since tax law changed though in 2017, those kind of opportunities aren't generally. So the good news is we will get some savings. Not quite as much as I was hoping. And then finally, the portfolio review. So we'll go to the sheet that we look at every month, and this is just our investment portfolio. I'll start in the upper left. We have total power of about 676 million. That's roughly the same as we had last month, only about $2.5 million difference. Yield to maturity is the same. So whenever we see, as Trustee Kistner, since you're new, I'm going to go through just a little bit of detail on this. But our yield to maturity is 3.08. Did not change this month. When that happens, it's just because the investments that roll off are getting invested at roughly the same rates. We had about $51 million of investments that matured this month. Average return on those was 5.2. And so that was roughly the return that we reinvested those funds. So no change in our yield to maturity. That benchmark, so we only had 50 million to 676 change. That's why we don't see big movements usually in our yield to maturity. The entire benchmark changes every month. So you'll see that one move around a lot more as rates move around, but it was relatively flat this month, 4.7. That big gap there is because we have investments that go out 2 or 3 years. So when interest rates were lower, we had locked in some rates at lower rates that are still kind of anchoring the portfolio. We'll have a decent amount of those roll off at the end of this month because we have a large debt service payment due on May 1st. So we should see a jump, or we will see a jump in our portfolio return next. It may not be next month because the next meeting's at the end of this month, but within the next couple of months, you'll see it on these reports because we'll drop about 60 million of lower return funds. Weighted average maturity, which is at WAMs, we usually stay around a year because we use a lot of these funds for operations. The benchmark is only invested in things 1 to 3 years out, so they're closer to 2 years usually. So there is a mismatch between our funds, our portfolio, and the benchmark there. If I move over to the upper right, sector allocation, this is just what we'd look at to determine whether or not we are in line with our investment policy. So we're allowed to have up to 100% of our funds in U.S. Treasury bonds or notes. We're at 54.5. Usually we try to put these funds where we have the best opportunities for rates, but also we consider obviously safety and liquidity. Federal agency bonds and notes about 32%. All of these are roughly in line with where they were last month too. Commercial paper, which sometimes presents a yield benefit, but we can only invest in commercial paper 180 days in. Since we're getting really good rates from Treasury and Fed agency bonds, we don't have as much commercial paper. That's only 13. We tend to get better rates on commercial paper when we can go out close to that 6 line. So that's usually what we do when that's available. Nothing special in the fund summary in the bottom. Those are just really rough general fund descriptions of where the money is. You can see the construction escrow and debt reserves have yield to maturities above the benchmark. Those turn over a little bit faster than the operation portfolio, which has those older funds that are anchoring us down. And then the bottom right, is just the maturity distribution, which is a comparison of our portfolio to the benchmark. We are the blue bars. The benchmark is the red bars. And so again, you can kind of see the mismatch. How we have a lot of our funds maturing within 1 year, where the benchmark funds are primarily maturing 1 to 3 years. Any questions on the operating fund portfolio? All right, hearing none, that is all the business we had for the Finance Committee meeting.
All right, thank you, everybody. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Trustee Wilson will get things set up and get ready to go for stakeholders. When you are.
Thank you. Welcome all to the April 2024 Stakeholder Relations Committee meeting. I get a roll call, please.
Yes, the record will reflect that all trustees are present. Trustee Evans is online.
Thank you. I have no comments. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of committee meeting minutes of March the 5th?
Meeting minutes. I'm shown not being here.
I'm sorry?
I'd like to offer, I don't know, an amendment to the, thank you. Not that I don't care, but I think I got confused.
Then-
I was here too. I was online. With that amendment on it. Move.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Without further ado, we'll move on to the meet. Ms. Paradis, how are you this morning?
I'm great.
Why don't you talk to us?
Okay. I have an ordinance before you. This ordinance is seeking to establish a new contract for $200,000 for one base year with 4 option years with Missouri AFL-CIO, Missouri Works Initiative, to provide assistance for low-income, unemployed, and underemployed people within MSD service area, and to obtain training and development for sewer construction occupation. This opportunity allows MSD to continue workforce development initiatives established by our community benefits agreement in addressing barriers to employment within the sewer construction industry. MSD began participation with the nationally recognized BUD STL program in 2014, and the Missouri AFL-CIO Missouri Works Initiative took over full operation of the program in 2021 to increase workforce development efforts among the building trades. The program has served over 400 individuals, with 65% of the graduates becoming employed in the construction trades through a registered apprenticeship program within 6 months of graduation. Regular reporting for the program will take place when Diversity delivers both its semi-annual and annual reports on an annual basis, and regular meetings and contact with the program with outreach activities are conducted throughout the year. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I have a question about.
Trustee Evans?
Oh, yeah, and not so much a question, but a comment. My law firm represents the Missouri AFL-CIO, and well, obviously I support the program and the Missouri Works Initiative. I will go to abstain. I think that probably is the appropriate action for me at the vote next week, just to give everyone a heads up.
Thank you. Trustee Kisner?
Yeah, I had a question about the, you mentioned that there was a 65%. Was that, is that considered a success? Were there metric goals that were set? And
well, the metrics indicate that the program tries to place at least 40% of the graduates. However, 65% of the graduates, they become either employed with the contractors that are associated with the program, or they enter actual apprenticeship programs that are conducted by the Missouri trades. So this is an introduction pre-apprenticeship program that introduces the individuals into the trades. They spend at least 1 week per trade that is participating, and it's a very comprehensive 120-hour program that they take.
so the 65% was exceeded the
It
goals
far
that were set.
exceeds.
That was what I.
Yes. Thank you.
No other questions? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Kingston, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, trustees. Appreciate the opportunity to provide you with an information security update district. I have with me today Jason Stockman, who will present part of the information. He is the Assistant Director of Technology, and he has been integral to the development and maturity of our. As we go through this information, please stop and ask questions as you'd like. We don't intend to paint a rosy picture, but we want to give you some confidence that we're diligent in our handling of cybersecurity and information security for the district. As far as the topics today, we have 4. The first 2 I'll present. One, we'll talk about the water sector. What are the emerging threats and risks that are going on? Probably things that you've heard about in the news. And number 2 is generative AI. That's definitely in the news. There's a lot of talk about it. I want to share with you what we're doing at the district to manage and govern that. And then the second 2 topics, or second set of topics, are our security rating, along with our cybersecurity program improvements. So the Biden administration sent out a letter to all state governors March 20th of the month, warning states of cyber attacks and threats, specifically to the water and wastewater. Those threats are in the form of, and you can see the details here, there was an Iranian government hack for multiple U.S. water facilities, and additionally one from a China-based set of hackers that were infiltrating U.S. water facilities. So these are real, and they are happening. And certainly, if the National Security Association and the EPA and the Biden administration are warning us of those acts, we take those seriously. And I want to show you next up what the reality of that is. Flip to the next slide. Sometimes we talk about threats in the news, and you wonder, like, well, how real are those? I can tell you that this information is from the last 3 months. It's what we see from our firewalls and our threat detection systems. It's just the last 3 months. These have all been blocked. So I want to assure you that they're not getting in. But truly, this is against our infrastructure where we're exposed to the internet. And you can see there where you have attacks from Russia, from China, Poland, Great Britain, Germany, and then the Netherlands, et cetera. So just kind of give you an idea of when we talk about the threat. This is the reality, but our technology that we have in place blocks those threats.
Quickly, one quick question.
Yes.
Jenny. Are these threats predominantly into the operational environment, or are they into the administrative side combination?
They are primarily administrative side, or we'd call it the IT. Yes, that's where those firewalls are situated. But we are going to talk about the operational side. Great question. On the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about, and here's where we'll talk about operational technology. And these are when we talk about, we call it OT. We're really talking about physical processes, things that are shop floor. We're talking about all the pump stations, devices that are at the plants that are now internet. This has become prime targets of the cyber criminals because they can create havoc, especially if it's the water system. They could poison they can then create chaos. Our operations. Those systems have been continually connected. So we have, when you called it the administrative side, we call it the IT side and the OT side. They've been connected because synergies there. You need to back them up. You want to manage those together. And once they're connected, then if you enter, a criminal would enter one side or the other, then each are equally threatened. So I want to talk a little bit about what we've done to kind of mitigate those and minimize the. Next slide. A couple important things and some strategy that we've. in fiscal year 23, and there was an audit report just last month or the month prior, where there was an OT audit or by internal audit, and they actually, there's a closed audit item related to network segmentation, and it's really just talking about separating the networks. So in terms of the OT and the IT side, separated them. We put in a tech, did that. It's called microsegmentation, doesn't matter. What it does is stop that. Make sure that if a threat comes in from the OT side, it won't hit the IT side. And similarly, IT to the did that. That was a big step. And it also presented a huge opportunity, I think, because we could see that the staff from the OT side, which is working up in the operations department, and the staff on the IT side work together with great synergy, great collaboration. And that's important because otherwise you would have to have additional technical in the operations department that you're already paying for in your IT department. So those are the synergies we see. It's cost effective for us to work together. And that's not typical. IT and OT are typically separated as far as their roles. But we looked at that project and said, wow, what a great. So in fiscal year 24, we looked at our strategic business operating, and OT network needs incident response plans, disaster recovery plans, policies. We've developed that side on the IT side, and it would be have 85%. We could apply that to. Those are things that we're working on in fiscal year. And now in fiscal year 5, what we plan to do and what our strategy is, Brett and Brian support this, is we're going to fold OT, IT management. We're not going to do the operational, engineering aspects of it, but we're going to do the technical support of it, strong technical support staff there, and then we can make more progress in securing the operation. Questions there? Did that meet the mark?
Thank you.
Next up is to talk about generative AI. That's in the news. It's going to take over everything. It's going to take over people's jobs. There's a lot evolving here, and we're watching it closely. A lot of peer discussions and information to try to ensure that we can manage it. Our strategy from a generative AI perspective is that we want to allow the responsible limited patient at the district to enable innovation, to enable efficiencies. However, we want strong governance because we don't want it too far in, because there's risk there. Every day there's a lawsuit of, hey, they've taken copyright data with that. They don't know, you don't know what they're doing with it. Kind of an arm's length, but we do want to cultivate that. We do have a policy. We've issued it, and we are presently having everyone do it. What's in that policy is an acceptable use, but more importantly, it's an approval process. You have a piece of software that you use. Let's evaluate it. Look at it. Say, what data is it going to use? Is it going to get into any PII information? Data that we need to protect? Would it expose anything in our infrastructure that shouldn't be? And then from the business side, the director of each department will look at that and have the discussion of the assessment. And, what's the cost benefit? That's our at this time. Generative. How we're going to. Questions there? Okay. I think I hand it over to Jason.
Good morning, trustees. So what I'm going to do is kind of go over some of the ratings and overview of what we have been doing here at the district, and then also kind of give you a little insight into some of our security awareness training initiatives to help protect our end users, because technology can only do so much, but we need to make sure that our end users are also up to date and as informed and trained as possible so that they can help us fight these different attacks that are coming in, because it's not always technology related. So if you go to the next slide, please. So this is a company we use. It's called BitSight, and it is an external review, so to speak, of our technology infrastructure, our public-facing infrastructure. You can kind of think of it as a credit score because it does come into play with insurance companies and financing. The higher our rating, the better it is for getting our premiums down and getting more favorable financing, because we propose less of a risk in the IT sector. So you can see there's quite a bit of information in there, and they look at everything. They look at our public face as far as the websites are concerned. They look at how our email is set up and communicating. They look at how they even have a way of looking at the updates on our computers, not through coming through and looking at it, but being reported from third parties. As far as whether or not our browsers are up to date, whether or not our operating systems are up to date and currently patched. So that all plays into this rating that we get. So if you could go to the next slide. Our current rating still stands at 760, which is considered advanced. It's a very good rating. I think we've topped out at 770, and we continue to work to improve that. It does adjust up and down a few points here and there, depending on some of the newer threats that come out, and we have to either address them, or if something gets identified as a potential risk, we address it by closing certain access to systems. One notable one is since we've upgraded to our payroll system, we no longer have a risk on our public side facing from our old payroll system, which was out of date. Was no longer supported. We were protecting it in various ways, but since we could close that access to the public, that significantly enhanced our security profile on that. Sure. So if you look at that blue graph, the bar, that kind of points out different times over the past year and where we've either had ratings going up or down. And on the right-hand side there, it kind of tells you why. If you look at it, some of it had to do with, you look at the very first one there, it says desktop software had a minor change and went from a A to a B. And again, that is because third-party systems, when you have what they call cookies on your computer, they report to a website what your browser you're using, what operating system you're using, what patch level it's at, and everything else. They sell that information to BitSight, and BitSight collects that information and then reports that back to us and lets us know how we're doing on that. And that also gives us insight into the patching the systems. Any questions on that? Okay, next slide. So now I want to kind of highlight some of the cybersecurity improvements that we've got. And again, this is things that we've done over the calendar and fiscal year 23 and into 24. If you go to the next slide. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, otherwise known as NIST, is a very well-known institution out there. They benchmark and make recommendations as far as best practices go in the cybersecurity world. And we follow their directives in what we try to implement and the technologies that we put into place. And they have 5 key cybersecurity framework functions to identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And there's multiple different functions that you can do inside of each one of those. And I just wanted to highlight some of the things that we've done over the year and over the course of the year and a half, and continue to look at to improve. One of them in the identify category is to maintain up-to-date hardware and software inventory, asset management. Again, that plays into our ratings. It also plays into us being able to assess our system. So we constantly, as Jenny mentioned, we're staying up to date with what is out in the world as far as the threat vectors. And we get notices of what they call CVEs, our vulnerabilities. And we then can take that and run our asset inventory and see which assets that we have that are potentially vulnerable to that, and we can work on patching that or closing that risk. So that is, it's under identify as well as protect. So we've done that. We continue to look at our managing of our device vulnerabilities, that second one there. We do a couple of things there. We do both internal and external vulnerability scanning against every asset in the district on the IT side. Once we do that, we then meet with the teams that are responsible for those particular pieces of equipment and work to mitigate those vulnerabilities by either patching or putting into place some other workaround to minimize the risk of that. And we also stay up to date with our what we call N-1 patching. And if you want to think of N-1, that's basically whatever the current operating system is. We only go back one version of that operating system. And the reason that's important is because approximately 80 to 85% of vulnerabilities can be mitigated simply by keeping your stuff up to date and keeping it patched. So it's a very important metric that we track, and we take that very seriously. We also implemented centralized logging. And what that is that basically all the logs and analytics that come from our different servers go into one centralized location, so that if we do have any kind of an incident that we need to look at, we have the ability to go back and look at these logs and see where, at what point in time, something may or may not have happened. That it is typically where a threat actor will go after when they get into a system. One of the things that they do before they leave is they wipe out the logs to try and wipe out any trace of that they've been there. It makes it harder for you to remediate and harder for you to understand what they've been doing. So that's an important protection tool that we put into place. The training of the users, that's always important. I think I mentioned that earlier. Technology can only take you so far. So we want to make sure that we're continuing to keep our users and everybody as up to date as possible. And that works on both ends. It does the security awareness training, which I have a slide for a little bit later, and our phishing exercises and everything, but it also is our annual tabletop exercises. So we annually train our information security team on different scenarios of different real world threats that are out in the environment. And then we take them through an exercise for them to utilize their skills and the tools that we have in place to identify a mocked up threat that we put into a test environment, so that they can work through and utilize that knowledge and skill set, so that it becomes more of a secondhand nature if an incident were to actually come about. As Jenny mentioned, the big one that we did was the segmentation of the operational technology environment. We implemented a piece of technology that effectively isolates each of the sides. The operational technology environment does piggyback off of our IT network. So technically they do run on the same wire, the same communication, but this technology allows us to keep those two systems isolated through the microsegmentation. And then another important one that we do is the separation of what we call privileged accounts. This is primarily for individuals that are in IT that need to have more rights to be able to do things such as load software, such as do updates, such as maintain and manage systems. So we segregate their day-to-day account, their email, so my user, as an example, my day-to-day account, the one I get emails on and everything else, has the standard privileges as everybody else's. Nothing, I can't do anything more with that account. We have a separate account that we call a privileged account that has the ability to do more within the systems and to do more to the systems. And this is important because that limits the exposure. So if my day-to-day account does happen to get compromised, it doesn't have any elevated rights to be able to do anything different. If they get to the privileged one, that's where the important information can be accessed. And that's why we separated those accounts. Any questions? Okay, the final one that I want to go over is the phishing campaign information. So this is a slide, it's a pretty busy slide, but it provides a lot of good data. The two things that I want you to kind of focus on are the purple dotted line that's even all the way across, and then the black line with the circles that kind of goes up and down throughout. And if you'll look, the purple line is actually the industry average of what they call fish-prone individuals, and that's again based on utility sector companies. And the average is about 5.6%. And you can see on the left-hand side of the slide, that's last year. Okay, so those are the different, and every dot that you see there is a phishing campaign that our information security team sent out. And those were the responses on that. And that kind of tracks how vulnerable or potentially vulnerable we could be if a user were to, if that were to have been a bad or a malicious email and someone would have clicked on either a link or went to a site or entered their credentials. And you can see over time, we've gone down and we are pretty comfortably below the industry average where that is. That is a good sign. It's very positive. It means that our users are taking to the training they're doing. They're reporting it. They're letting us know that they're doing that. And it's a continuous effort that we have to do to continue to train our people, because as Jenny mentioned, AI, for all of its wonderful capabilities, is also a very scary tool when it comes to the threat actor side. And there's been some very notable threats or compromises that have used AI. So we have to be constantly aware of that. So we continue to change our campaign and to update it to make sure that it's relevant and valid for our end users. Any questions? I think that's all that I had. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out and we'd be happy to talk to you more about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. From your staff, good work. Stay on the AI piece.
We will.
Very concerned. Sounds like we're watching math and looking to govern how we bring it in. My concern is how we shut ourselves off from those who are not subjected to our procedures. Got to keep the doors, the walls up around us. My limited knowledge or experience with AI right now, anyone that wants to step into the AI world, there are sites out, OpenAI is out there and will give you a free account. You can use ChatGPT to do almost anything. There are those who say that every piece of information on the internet right now is available to the AI community if they know how to use it. And they're not restricted as to getting to them. Free versions, you can pay limited amounts of money to get higher access versions, and amazing information right now that you can get back using those. Very concerned that if we, not just MSD, but I worry about all the utilities, how to shut this stuff down. Doesn't take a technical expert in the industry to affect the industry through AI. If you would, kind of keep us posted on where we're going or how we're doing. Thank you again. We have a requirement to go into closed session to discuss personnel actions under revised Missouri statute, paragraph 610.021(3). Get a motion.
I'll move.
Second.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Trustee Wabi?
Aye.
Trustee Kistner?
Aye.
Trustee Evans?
Yes.
Trustee Watson?
Yeah.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Nicholasison?
Yes.
All right, we're in closed session. Thank you.
Motion to, since we've completed the business, I'll entertain a motion to end the committee.
We
So we have to
did.
come out
We did.
online.
Guys are broadcasting right now.
You ready now? Okay, I need a motion to come out of closed session.
Second.
Okay, we're
All
out
in
of-
favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 We're out of closed session. We've completed the business of the committee. The next meeting is the 30th of April, scheduled for the 30th of April. Can I get a motion to adjourn the committee meeting?
So move.
Second.
Thank you. It's been the pleasure of my life. folks.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
I use that line.